afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the SANS webcast today, How to Become a Cybersecurity Expert, Stories and Lessons from SANS's Nik Alleyne. We are so pleased to have Nik with us today to share our very first SANS Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force webcast, along with the SANS HBCU Committee. If anyone has questions for Nik during the presentation, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A, and we will be answering questions throughout the presentation. Nik would like this as interactive as possible, so ask whatever questions you have. Thank you so much for being with us today, and Nik, take it away.
All right, good day, everyone. Laura, can everyone hear me? Laura, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Hey, good day, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this journey as we promote SANS diversity program. My name is Nik Alleyne. I'm very, very excited that you've taken a couple minutes out of your day to just learn a little bit more about me, as well as, like the title says, how to become a cybersecurity expert. They say to become an expert at anything, you need to have been doing it constantly. You need to be doing it repetitively. That repetition gives you experience. So in order for you to really understand how I happen to get here today, it is important that I take you back in time. For some of us, you might consider it way back in time, but a little bit of history lesson for myself also. But as we start this journey, I'm going to start it from the perspective of when I graduated high school. I graduated high school, and just for context also, I'm originally from Guyana. Does anyone know, or how many of you in the list knows where Guyana is? Please feel free to post your answer, right? If you know where Guyana is located on the map in the globe, post your answer in the chat. But I'm originally from Guyana. Awesome, Saluni, South America, great job. So the reason I asked that is because typically when I'm teaching for SANS, or sometime when I meet new people, I would say, you know, I'm from Guyana. And then I would ask the question, do you know where Guyana is? And some people tend to say Africa, and I said, no, that's Ghana. And some people say the Caribbean, I say, you're close, but Guyana is actually in South America, and it's the only English-speaking country in South America. So for context, I'm originally from Guyana. We'll get to where I am, where I currently live shortly. I graduated high school, and my intention after graduating high school was to pursue, let me just change the slide here, right? Just some quick notes about me here, actually. I'm a SANS instructor, certified instructor, about 20 years plus experience. Currently, my title is the Director of Business Development for Serious Computer Solutions, which is a managed security services provider. I have a couple of books that I published, and I've authored the SANS SEC 582, Mastering T-Sharp Network Forensics class, as well as I blog at securitynik.com. Those are things we will get back to shortly. The agenda for today, basically my story, right? Here and now, my future, and some lessons to share. I will be sharing lessons throughout, but we will probably touch back on some of the points as we go along. So I got a little bit ahead of myself before, so let me restart. As it says here, I never planned on being here. So I graduated high school, and my intention was to pursue accounting studies. I wanted to go to university, but I could not afford to go to university since I did not have the economic means. I did not have a job at that point in time to allow me to go to university. So I applied for a job at a company, at the local newspaper company, a company called the Guyana Chronicle. And as I go through, you will hear me call the company names, you will hear me call people name. And I'm doing this because I wanted to give a shout out to those people, because ultimately it's a lot of the influences from those organizations, as well as the people that allowed me to be who I am today. So I applied to this company to be an accounts clerk. I did the interview, I did not get the job. As you can see, there's already a problem here. I seem to like accounting, but accounting does not seem to like me. I wanted to go to university, I could not afford it. I did an interview for a job for accounting, I got denied. But interestingly, the young lady that did the interview, the human resources manager, a young lady named Miss Donna Tucker, she invited me back for a different job. a job in data entry. Well, since it's a newspaper company, my responsibility was basically like typing up classified ads and so on to put in the newspaper. Not exactly what I was hoping for. I wanted to do accounting, but hey, I'm out of school, and like most people, I'm just excited that I have a job. So I started that job and I started working with the data entry. And as I continued, I started expanding into different things around computers. And as I expanded, it was not just about like setting up computers and so on. I started doing stuff around page layout. Remember, I was hired and I was just typing classified ads, data entry. Then I started doing newspaper layout, magazines layout, working with Photoshop and all of these different things, all while using technology. Some of these technologies, some of you might only hear about if you go to the Computer History Museum, MS-DOS, Novell NetWare. eDirectory to some extent is still in use today. Windows 95, 98, NT, all of these technologies I've worked with. But as I was using those technologies or expanding my knowledge in those technologies, it was more so from the perspective of opportunity, not an interest. Remember, my interest still lied in pursuing accounting. So now that I have a job and I could afford to go to university, I decided that, okay, I'm going to go back to university. I'm going to go to university. The administrator at that time, who is now what I consider my big brother, a guy named Roderick Harry, he, for whatever reason, he saw something in me as I was going along the path, moving from data entry, running cables, crimping cables, setting up new computers, working with all these different technologies and so on. He saw something in me that I did not see. And he kept insisting that I understudy him. Being the systems administrator, I knew what understudying him meant. It meant that I would have had to do more work around computers. And once again, my interest has nothing to do with computers. My interest is around accounting. So I said, no, I'm not interested. And as he insisted, I resisted. Once again, no interest in computers. So I then said, okay, I'm going to go to university and pursue my degree in accounting. I signed up for university to pursue that degree in accounting. And after one semester, I dropped out. You can see that I might like accounting, but accounting does not seem to like me. I wanted to go to university at first. I could not afford it to pursue accounting. I applied for a job to do accounting. I got denied, instead got put in a job for computers. Went to university to pursue accounting, did not make the cut properly, and I dropped out. As I dropped out, I recognized that my interest seems to lie around this quote unquote computer thing. Once again, it's not really my interest at this point in time, but it seems to come naturally. So as it came naturally, I started doing more and more, expanding my knowledge on the Novell NetWare, the networking, the Windows NT, and all of these different things. Started doing work around wireless networking and start moving some of the tasks that were currently outsourced, bringing them in-house, which means I had to write up a report to do cost-benefit analysis and all of these things. And I'm mentioning these things to show that it is not just a focus on the hard technical skills, but it's also the soft skills that will help you throughout this journey as you become an expert on whatever it is you choose. For us at SANS here specifically, it is cybersecurity at this time. So I ultimately decided, okay, if I'm going to get better at this computer thing, it's already coming naturally, maybe I should go back to university. The difference between pursuing the accounting degree at university and the computer science degree is that the accounting degree, I could have done that after work, like in the evening, but with the computer science degree, it was what they considered full-time, meaning it operated during the day. Now, remember, I already could not have attended university initially because I could not afford it. So I went to the general manager at that point in time, a young man named Mr. Ulrich Captain. And I said, sir, I'm in a little bit of a predicament here. I would like to go to university to pursue accounting, but at the same time, I cannot quit my job. He asked, what is it you want to do? It's not accounting, computer science, I should say. I said, and I cannot quit my job. He said, okay, you're thinking about going to do a degree program. How about we look at this in 2 years batches instead? Maybe you go do the diploma. If you like it, then you pursue with the degree. And what we will do for you is, rather than you working full-time, you will resign from full-time, but we will hire you on a part-time basis. And thus, you will work hours that surround your classes, which means your classes get the priority. You get an opportunity to still work. and you have an opportunity to make an income. That was one of the biggest impacts on my learning, my development, and what has led me now, what I believe, on this trajectory. So I went to university, I pursued a computer science degree, and I will mention also that I got literally a degree. It doesn't mean I got all Ds. It means that I was not, quote unquote, an honor student or anything like that at that point of my career. Now, the reason I mention that is because later on I will talk about stepping out of your comfort zone. For me, whilst I was in Guyana, I was in my comfort zone, which means there was no reason for me to really do anything exceptional, for me to do anything much different. I knew where I was, and I was very, very comfortable doing it. But if you're going to excel, you have to step out of your comfort zone, and I will come back to this shortly. So as I continued at the Chronicle, I expanded my knowledge. I had tremendous opportunities to work with some great people, some great technologies, really, really that. And later on, you will see the company that I'm working for today really set the tone for exactly what is going on today. So once again, the novel netwares, technologies that you probably might have never heard about, MS-DOS, Windows NT, all of these things really are technologies that I worked with in the past. Along with that, work with some external consultants. All of those perspectives and opportunities really allowed me to build my skill set in computers, or computing if you wish. After about 9 years, I transitioned from the Guyana Chronicle, and I started working for Western Union International. This is now a financial services. The reason I'm mentioning that is you will see that my experience spans different segments, different verticals, different industries. So I started off in the newspaper business, then I transitioned to Western Union Guyana. Western Union Guyana was run by a Jamaican company called Grace Kennedy Remittance Services. And at Western Union, the young lady that really gave me an opportunity to shine there was the country director at that time, a young lady named Miss Annalisa Fraser-Pang. And I did have a manager, but I think most of the impact of what I was able to do came as a result of Annalisa, because she's the one that really got me the opportunity to go to Trinidad, for example, to pursue CCNA, Cisco CCNA training and so on. But whilst at Western Union, a lot of my work had to do with, let's say, setting up new Western Union locations, tearing them down, providing that support, which means I was like in and out every single day. And most of my job was actually in the field, because it was called a field support officer. But I also did a lot of work internally, just not as much as I did when I worked, for example, at the Guyana Chronicle. I was not so heavily involved in like directory services and heavily involved in the network and stuff. A lot of that was run out of the Jamaica office, but I was still involved because we did have a manager that I worked closely with also. But at Grace Kennedy, right there, or at Western Union International, got opportunities to take advantage of. Actually, I think there is where I probably start spending more time with tools such as Wireshark and so on, learning a lot more about packets, writing some scripts to perform actions when users log into their system and so on. And then after, I think it's about 3 years, I left Western Union and I migrated to Canada, where I currently reside. Now, prior to migrating from Guyana to Canada, I already knew that I wanted to go back to school. And prior to leaving Guyana, I had signed up to attend George Brown College to pursue a postgraduate certificate in wireless networking, wireless security basically, with specialization in wireless broadband. Now, when I attended George Brown College, I believe every semester I was straight A's. Every semester I believe I was on the dean's list. The reason for mentioning this now is because, remember I just said back in Guyana, I was in my comfort zone. I graduated with a degree. Now I'm in a different environment where I'm not in my comfort zone and I'm basically straight A's every semester. It is important that you understand that relying on your comfort zone is only going to get you so far. You have to push the boundaries, or someone has to push you to be able for you to excel beyond the norm, beyond average. Whilst I was at college, and actually just as I started college, I got a job offer, very nice pay to start off. But the problem was I had just passed the period to withdraw from the college. And if I withdrew and took up this job offer, I would not get a refund. That was a bummer. So I asked the company if they would mind refunding me that money. I guess they did not. And as they say, the rest is history. I did not get that job. But as I continue going to school, I continue learning and building out my skills, learning a lot more about wireless networking, Linux, security, and so on. And just about 3 weeks before I finished the school, IBM reached out to me about a job offer. They wanted me to start right away. Realistically, I have 3 more weeks to go. It would have been nice if IBM had said that, maybe as soon as you finish school, you can come work for us, but it did not work out like that. So I was not willing to give up on my school with 3 more weeks to go work for any company. So I stuck it out and I worked at school, and I stayed at school. Once I finished school, I got into my first job at what is called Bronte College, Canada. It is a private boarding school, and there I really got an opportunity to excel on some of my security skills and so on. Now, the interesting thing also for you to understand is that in me taking up the job at Bronte College, it was the first job offer I got, and it's the first one I took because I needed to get my foot into the door. It is similar to how when I left high school, I just needed a job. When I came to Canada and I took up that first job offer, I just wanted to get my foot in the door. The amount on the salary side that job paid me was about half of what the first job offer I got was paying. So for me, it was not about the salary. It was about the ability to be able to contribute right away whilst also learning. Note, I say contribute right away because I plan on building on my previous experience. My 9 years with the Guyana Chronicle, my 3 years with Western Union, those are all things that has ultimately made me successful in that job. And in that job, I had an opportunity to work with lots of open source solutions, Linux, OpenLDAP, integrating Windows Active Directory and its DNS with Bind, working with virtualization. Basically, at that school, I was the IT guy, meaning if anything goes wrong, everybody comes to me. The TV is not working, they come to Nik. To be honest, up to this day, I cannot fix a TV. But the point is, anything that is not working, it's Nik. Anything that needs to be resolved, it's Nik. And the biggest thing for me, I think, at that company, because remember, I already brought in a lot of networking, some soft skills that needed to continue to be developed. But one of the biggest things was the phone system. Similarly to how I mentioned companies such as Novell Netwear, which some of you might never hear about or might have never heard about. Nortel Networks was, at one time, you can call it the king, the prince, the queen, whatever it is, of the telecom industry. And I knew nothing about supporting telephone system infrastructure. But when the phones are not working or the voicemail, the Meridian voicemail systems have a problem, ultimately everyone comes to Nik. Once again, I did not know what to do, but the good part about it is I was willing to learn. In the office that I occupied, all of the books, all of the manuals for the phone systems were on the shelf. And I would take those books home and I would read them. And ultimately we got to the stage where I was very, very comfortable supporting that phone system. Basically moving from a stage where I knew nothing to a stage where I was very comfortable supporting that phone system. And this would transfer to other things also, but the other technologies, I did not need to invest as much time and effort as I did with the Meridian, for example, or some of the other things. So working on the Linux helped me really to branch out my skill set there, implementing some new technologies and so on. And in a school system, it is totally different from an enterprise. Schools typically, or an education environment, typically leverage a lot of open source solutions. So that job really gave me an opportunity to expand my knowledge way beyond what it was before. And you will see that trend because each one of these jobs would have helped me to ultimately get to this stage. Now, along with that, as I partake in these jobs, or in this specific job at this time at Bronte College, I was also building out my peripheral knowledge, if you wish. Like I pursued my Microsoft Certified System Engineer and my Microsoft Certified Administrator, my Cisco CCNP Professional. All of these things I pursued so that when a problem arises, I don't have to scramble to the internet or some other means to ultimately figure out what the problem is. I would have had very good working knowledge of how these technologies work because I've studied these technologies to some extent. So it's not just about the hands-on that you get on a daily basis, but also how you expand your knowledge beyond what is just in front of you. So Bronte College was very, very good for my career, for my development, and for where I am today. And for that, personally, shout outs to, for example, Win Louis, who was the operations manager at that time, because he really allowed me to shine in that job also. I then transitioned to Maxam Analytics, where I worked for 2+ years. Maxam Analytics is a scientific services company, which means they did a lot of testing for DNAs, petroleum, air, food, anything around scientific services they handle. And this was a much larger organization than Bronte College. Actually, up to the time when I left there were about 23 domain controllers, I think, across Canada. There were 8 Exchange servers, lots of locations across Canada, and I really enjoyed the experience working there. Once again, great support from the Jason Goldring, who was my manager, Radu Stansielskiu, who was the national director. One of the first tasks, actually, I got hired there to support BlackBerry Enterprise Server, Microsoft Exchange, and Active Directory. BlackBerry Enterprise Server, you might hear about it today, but it's not as probable, and I may be wrong on this, but I don't think it is as prevalent as it was back in the past. But that is what I was hired to support. And like everything else, my role typically evolves. And one of the first things I noticed there was the organization was using WEP, wired equivalent privacy, on their wireless network. And I asked the manager, I said, why in this day and age are we using WEP? He said they just never got the time, to get around to fixing that. I thought, okay, that was interesting. Fortunately for me also, at that time, I was pursuing, I already had wireless knowledge, obviously. I pursued a postgraduate certificate in wireless networking, specialization in wireless broadband. But I was also pursuing some wireless training that was found on securitytube.net, right? This guy had some very detailed wireless training. And as a result of what I knew about WEP and the vulnerabilities, I took my wireless card to work, load up my backtrack. What you might be using today as Kali was previously backtrack. So I loaded that up and I scanned the airwaves, captured some packets, ultimately cracked those packets, got the wireless password, took it to the manager, and he was like, okay, we get the point. We will upgrade. Fortunately for me also, that upgrade fell on my hands. And we upgraded the wireless infrastructure from WEP to WPA TTLS, where we took advantage of certificates to perform authentication. The good part about implementing that project is that it also gave me the opportunity to build out the public key cryptography infrastructure, which we also leverage for other things, such as there was something called Outlook Anywhere. The problem was in that organization, and this is something also I implemented there. In the organization, when you open, and this was years back, right? When you open your Outlook within the organization, everything was fine. You would get access to your emails immediately. But when you were out of the organization, you needed to connect to the VPN to then be able to connect to Outlook. That I considered cumbersome. So what we did was implemented something called Outlook Anywhere, where I think you turn on RPC via HTTPS, which means now we set up the certificate on the system, made some configuration changes, and once you open Outlook, you would connect just as if you were in the office. So I really got an opportunity there to work with public key cryptography, but there were tons of other stuff that I did in that organization around Active Directory supporting there. And actually at the time of me leaving, I would say I was the go-to person for almost anything involved in that infrastructure, be it is Active Directory, Exchange, networking, anything. Now, one of the things also is, as you go through, a lot of us like to focus on the hard skills, but if you're working in security and you want to get visibility, that is the key word too, visibility, you have to know your network. And one of the things I did there was mapped the entire infrastructure. And when I say map, I mean literally drew the map via Visio of how each device is connected. To do this, I took advantage of the Cisco Discovery Protocol, or the CDP, which allowed me to see the connectivity between the devices and ultimately drew a map reflecting of the entire topology. Along with that, Today, some of you might be using tools like Security Onion. Security Onion, I believe, was formally launched in maybe 2009 or 2012. But prior to 2012, I did not know about Security Onion, but I myself had built a similar solution to Security Onion, where I deployed, I think up to the time of when I left, it was either 5 or 7 sensors I deployed across the enterprise. What it was is basically I had Snort, I had some other open source security monitoring tools, put everything into a virtual machine, and I had one central virtual machine at the corporate office that I can monitor all the locations. And at each site, I would send the administrators a copy of that virtual machine that has been configured for their location. So they would see how their network is operating, the security issues that might be occurring on their network. And this included not just security monitoring from packets and logs and so on, but I had things like, there was a solution called Centrion that was built based on Nagios. At one time I deployed Nagios, but then I found Centrion to be a little bit user-friendly, if you wish, less of the heavy lifting in the background. So I migrated from Nagios to Centrion, where I was now monitoring the entire infrastructure. So not just security, but operation perspective. And that virtual machine that had the security component, those administrators were able to see in their infrastructure what is going on. But I, from the corporate side, as the quote unquote overlord, I could monitor the entire enterprise. Once again, this is where a lot of my security skills really started building out. And I mentioned previously that, I pursued my CCNP as a Cisco Certified Network Professional whilst at my previous, whilst at Bronte College. And now that I was more focused on the security side of things, I then pursued the CCNP security as I upgraded the CCNP routing and switching. And similarly, I expanded my Windows knowledge from the MCSE to the Microsoft IT Professional Enterprise Administrator, Server Administrator. And I try to build those knowledge out. Remember, you don't want to sit and wait until an issue arises before you try to figure out how to solve it. If you have an understanding of how the technology works, that makes it tremendously, or let me rephrase that, makes it significantly easier for you to resolve a problem when it does arise. So once again, Maxim, tremendous opportunities for me to grow my skill set, implemented tons of stuff that allowed me to take advantage of security and build out my security skill set. And I'm very, very grateful to that organization and the opportunities it provided. Note, I said the opportunities it provided. Once I left Maxim, I then transitioned to the company I'm at today, which is Serious Computer Solutions. But Serious Computer Solutions was previously, the unit that I worked for was previously Foresight Technology Canada. And at Foresight, I entered into what was the entry-level job. Note, I'm coming from a job where I was literally the guy, let me rephrase that, quote unquote, the man, responsible for everything in the enterprise, to now come take up a job where I am the entry level. I'm the first level of the job. The title of that job at that time was an associate consultant. Today, that role is called an analyst. But I literally came in at the entry level. You would say, but Nick, with all of this experience, why do you even want to take up that opportunity? Well, one, it did pay a little bit better, but two, and most importantly, it reflected where I wanted to take my career. And that was the most important thing. So I got in there as an associate consultant and started working with some technologies I'd never worked with before, like IBM QRadar. No, at that time, I don't think we supported FireEye, but mostly IBM QRadar and SourceFire. Now, SourceFire was acquired by Cisco and is now part of their Firepower solution. But the reason I'm referencing that is because the skill set that I acquired whilst building out open source Snort solution, as well as implementing those solutions, ultimately made the process of me understanding the SourceFire product a lot easier, because all I needed to do was understand the SourceFire interface, not so much the background or the backend, because I knew how Snort operated. So for me, it was just about understanding how they do things from the user interface perspective. And along with that, I learned technologies such as Checkpoint and so on as we went along. But in 2013, Foresight at that time sent me to Florida to pursue my first SANS certification, training and certification, which was the SEC 503, the intrusion detection in depth class. I really enjoyed that class. It is still one of my favorite SANS class. I know I'm being a little bit biased here. In 2014, I got sent back to Florida again, this time to pursue the SEC 504 class. Once again, an exciting class. Hacker techniques, exploit, incident handling, and so on. Really like that because It helped me to gain a perspective of how the attacks occur and how I might be able to detect them, especially since I like the packets. They say packets or it did not happen. And it was after that class in 2014, and actually, I don't think it was after the class directly, I lied. It was during that class because in 2014, I believe, at the same time, whilst I was at that training, the Heartbleed vulnerability came out. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And me alone in the hotel room, nothing else to do, I figured, you know what? I always wanted to start a blog. I should probably start that blog today. And the first blog post I wrote was, why even blog? Something to that extent. And the next post, I believe, had something to do with detecting the Heartbleed vulnerability, because shout out to Jake also, I believe is malware Jake, I believe is his handle on Twitter. But Jake, I believe, had done a talk on the Heartbleed vulnerability. So I went back, and I did some additional research, and I did maybe my second blog post on how you can set up a lab to detect the Heartbleed vulnerability and ultimately detect it via packets and so on. So after the 2014, I came back, I did the training, I started my blogging, and I continued to blog consistently after that. I believe it was 2015 or maybe the same 2014 after I came back from the training, a little while after, I got promoted from associate consultant to consultant. And then within a short time, I believe I got an interim title, like team lead. And then ultimately I got promoted to the manager of cybersecurity, and then ultimately the senior cybersecurity manager. And today my title says Director Business Development. Shout out to Ms. Dragana Vranik for the support she has provided to me throughout this period. Without her, I doubt whether my career would have taken off the way it has. Because first thing is, you have to ensure you have adequate support. You have to ensure people believe in you, and you need to make it easier for them to believe in you. Okay? But shout out to her for having confidence in me, having trust in me. For example, she said, Nick, I need to start up a unit in Serbia. She did not come and say, this is what I need you to do and that is what I need you to do. She said, this is what I need, and she left everything else up to me. And it has been true for everything else that she's allowed me to be successful at. She did not need to make me the manager of cybersecurity. That was a role that probably had only me at that time. Ultimately, I built that out into a 17-person team until I transitioned to a new role. Supporting technologies from the FireEyes, the Palo Alto, Cisco, obviously the Source Fires, Checkpoint, Splunk, you name it, all of these, Blue Coat, all of these technologies I've supported one way or the other within this current job. So now you have an opportunity to understand how I got here. You recognize that I never planned on being here, but how I got here. Now, why I'm still here, primarily because I love what I do, and I'm grateful, extremely grateful to the people that got me here. Okay? I mentioned those organizations. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, before you continue to the next slide, we have some questions for you, but I don't need to cut you off.
Okay.
You ready for some questions?
Go ahead, let's shoot.
All right. So back in the earlier part of your story, how did you keep yourself motivated during that tough time? How could you give some advice on how to balance your job search and your learning at the same time?
Okay. How did I keep myself motivated? If the early part I do not think that I needed much motivation. For example, when I was back in Guyana, as I said, that was my comfort zone. I had a relatively good life back there. I like riding motorcycles. I had a Yamaha R6. That's a super bike. I rode that. I really had fun. I was in my comfort zone. So I don't think I really needed motivation. I just did things maybe as they come along. But once I migrated to Canada, my mindset changed. You can say it changed maybe because of a different environment. You can say it changed maybe because I've matured. You can say it changed because of a number of reasons. But the reality is my mindset changed. Now, how you balance the job search and with everything else, to be honest, even though I got my first job after I came out of school, whilst I was at school, between the period I got to Canada and I actually got my first job, I would be shocked if someone tells me that I sent less than 200 resumes out for jobs. So you have to ultimately keep pursuing your dreams, whatever it is, and you have to find the balance. I will get more to the balance on how I address it today. If you don't mind, let me address that when I look to the future, right? But I will help you understand how I address the balance today. Is that cool?
Perfect.
Okay.
Next question. Nik, this is a very interesting story. How did you get people to help you? Also, for us newcomers, what would be the best way to get experience and skills that lend to that first job?
The first one is how did I get people to help me? I have been fortunate, I think, except maybe one job, I'm not going to call which one. My immediate manager has always given me the support. My first job, I did not intend to be in computers. Somebody saw something in me. So it's not like I pushed and asked for help. That person pushed me. They saw something in me that I did not see, and they helped me. My second job, I would say it's mixed, but the country director, she really helped me grow. At Bronte College, I don't think there was much of a need also, because once again, I started pushing myself and I just had the support. And even here at Sirius, Dragon of Ranik, I did not really have to ask much for help. There have been times when I asked, but most of the time it's just people giving me the opportunity to shine. And fortunately or unfortunately, I have not disappointed as yet.
Nice. Okay. Next question. Aside from the universe pushing you into IT in the beginning, which would you define as the most pivotal moment of your career?
I think the most pivotal moment, there's probably a lot I can choose from, but if there was one, I would say is Mr. Ulrich Captain at the Guyana Chronicle giving me an opportunity to go pursue my computer science degree while still allowing me to work. Because if he had ever said no at that point, I would have had to make a tough choice. It is either I quit working and go back to school, which I don't know how I would have afforded that, or I stayed in school or I stayed working and maybe be a little miserable because I did not get the opportunity to pursue a degree. So I would say that would probably be the most pivotal.
Great. What is your opinion on attending RSA for beginners like me?
Great question. I would say any opportunity you get to expand your knowledge, be it is RSA, one of the SANS conferences, and these days with COVID-19, SANS have lots of conferences that are online that you can register freely for and take advantage of those. So don't let this be about RSA. Let this be about expanding your knowledge wherever the opportunity lies. And SANS have tons of opportunities today for you to expand your knowledge as it relates to free resources. Be it is the reading room that you can read documents, or presentations that are done online via the various conferences. Take advantage of those.
All right, and final question for right now. What in your journey in Canada would you have done differently?
That's a very interesting question. I don't think there was anything for me to do differently. As I look back, honestly, I don't think there was one thing I would change. It would have probably been nicer if I got a job that immediately paid me a ton of money, at least to match what my first job offer, but that was not the case. I got a job that paid me half of what the first job offer provided, but it was not about the money, right? So I would personally not change anything because I'm very happy with the support that I've gotten from those individuals, those organizations, and where I'm at today. And do note, we haven't gotten the opportunity to really touch on SANS as yet, okay?
Great. So we have about 15 minutes left, Nik, so
all right,
take it away.
Thank you. And the biggest part of the conversation was I needed to give you that history. If I did not give you the history, you would not get enough of a context, okay? So here and now, we know that today my job title says Director of Business Development and I work at Sirius, but let's focus on SANS to some extent here. I started my first, actually, let me step back a little bit. SANS reached out to me, maybe it was same 2014 or 13, whatever it is, about what they did at that time. At that point in time, they ran something called the mentor. So the mentor was like, there are a couple of people that want to study for a SANS certification. Those people might not take a SANS class, but a group of them, they might study on their own, and then a group of them might meet, let's say, once a week for maybe about a 6 weeks period, and they would, me being the instructor would help them to understand any challenges they're having with a particular topic. I believe I tried to execute on that program within Canada here for maybe a year or two, and it never worked out, and I really got bummed on that one. I really was disappointed that that never materialized, but fortunately, SANS stuck with me. And shout out to Tiffany Keller, for example, who reached out to me in 2015 and say, hey, Nik, we have an opportunity for a co-teach in Ottawa. Would you be interested? And you would be working with Adrienne de Beaupré, who is going to be the lead on this one. I said, definitely, and I was excited about that. And shout out to Adrian, first he did not need to take a rookie and put him under his arms to say, okay, I'm going to take you along on this journey. He could have just said, I'm a professional, I'm a SANS certified instructor, I don't need to have anyone tagging along. But shout out to him for the accommodation that he made to me. And I reached out to him, I say, hey, anything particular that I should prepare for as I go through? And he recommended some sections and so on. But in my own interest also, I took the opportunity to review the entire books and go through step by step by step. So we got to the class and, Adrienne introduced me and so on. And the first day, when I got the opportunity to speak, I was so nervous that on the evaluation forms, and just to step back for 1 second, if you ever go to a SANS conference, there are 2 things you're sure about. And this is more so for the in-person conference. And shout out to SANS for going back to in-person conferences also very soon. But if you ever go to a SANS conference, there are 2 things you're sure about: daily evaluations, and more than likely a lot of carbs, because there's always cookies and all of these different things for you to get. But let's focus on the evaluations. One of the students, on my evaluation after the first day, he said, I can sense your nervousness. Walk around the room a little bit during the day also. So I reviewed that eval in the evening, and the next day I walked around the room and I paced myself. And obviously I was a little less nervous. Note I said little less, still nervous obviously, but little less, because I've had an opportunity to see the audience on the first day, and the second day now I'm a little less nervous. And he said, yeah, just walk around the room and so on. At the end of that second day, that student put on the eval form, great job today. What is my point? That student on day 1 could have said, SANS scores you from 1 to 5. That student could have marked me down as a 1, but instead that student gave me motivation, right? And I was able to go back the next day and be better than I was the day before. And I don't know the student's name, but I'm forever grateful for that. And today, I look forward to completing the SANS or reviewing the SANS evals on a daily basis, because it allows me the opportunity to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday, right? Or even than I am today. As a different example, the young lady I mentioned previously, Ms. Dragana Vranik, who is our VP at Sirius for the Managed Security Services, one of the first times she and I met with clients, after the client meeting, she pulled me aside and she said, you could have done this differently and so on. I think that was a mistake she made. And I say that in a nice way, because these days, anytime she and I attend a meeting, I don't wait for the meeting to be finished. The first opportunity we get to take a break, I ask her, what could I have done differently? This gives me an opportunity to adapt faster. So if the meeting had, let's say, a pre-lunch and a post-lunch, then the post-lunch, I should be better than I was the pre-lunch. The point I'm making here is that me personally, I look forward to the SANS evals because it helps me to be smarter tomorrow than I am today. Okay, so SANS, I got the opportunity to start teaching the 503. Shout out to Adrienne. I then picked up on SEC 504. I think 1 year after. Shout out to John Gorenflow, where he also, I did a co-teach with him, and he was very supportive. But those are people that were directly in front of the line, right? When I say front of the line, directly there with me. But there are lots of other people in the background that some of them I have not really gotten a close opportunity to work with, but 2 of them that has been very, very supportive of me throughout this journey. One no longer is with SANS, and that's Miss Karen Adams, I think the last name is. And definitely Lisa Peterson. Without the support of these people, my SANS journey might have been a little bit more complicated, because for example, there are times when you see students put some things on the evals and you don't understand the context and why they would say some of these things. But speaking with people in SANS, like the Lisas and so on, helps you to understand it is not just about evals, there are tons of other things. And whereas one student might have one perspective of something, all of the other students might not. So if we say we get 20 evals and one student believes this was going the wrong way and 19 other students says they love it this way, then we have to now look at it from maybe a different perspective. So the point I'm making here is that me personally, I look forward to those constructive criticism, constructive feedback, gracious for the support from the people at SANS that have helped me throughout this journey, grateful to SANS to choose me as one of the candidates to promote their diversity program, because I do believe it is important. For me personally, when I'm hiring, diversity is something I pay a great interest in as I expand on any team that I'm building or recommendations for hiring. So what else I do besides being an instructor? Obviously, I've written 2 books, right? Hack and Detect, as well as Mastering T-Shark and Network Forensics. I do a lot of blogging. I might not have been blogging as much recently because I'm doing a lot of learning in the background. We will touch on that shortly. But once again, right, I was grateful for the people who got me here. But more importantly, I'm grateful also for the people who have to keep me here. So my future, basically, I'm on the same journey, just different destinations, right? I'm still pursuing stuff around computers, right? I'm not switching out from that. That is where I recognize my interest best lies. And I should mention also, go back here for a second, here and now, actually, in shouting out foresight also, I must mention, and this again is your comfort zone. I also pursued a master's in cybersecurity forensics at a Utica college in the US. And even in that college, every semester, I was straight A's. Even at one time in one of the classes, one of the instructors said, I can probably teach that class. He was right, but that was not my, I was not there to teach. I was there to learn. And I say that because once again, I'm talking about stepping out of your comfort zone. Remember I said back in Guyana, right? I'm in my comfort zone. I literally graduated with a degree. Once again, not all D's. I just mean I was not an A student all the time. But once I got to Canada, and I stepped out of that comfort zone, I was straight A's all the time at George Brown, straight A's all the time as I pursued my my master's degree in cybersecurity forensics. Okay, so new destination, same journey. A lot of what I do today has to do with building new talent. Like I just completed a boot camp in Serbia, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is probably the third boot camp that we've run. We basically would take a group of people and immerse them in technologies such as Checkpoint or QRadar or Amazon. They're just paid to study, and within the period of time, they have to also get certified. We run those out of here. I also work out of here as in Canada. I also work closely with local colleges and so on via the co-op program. I run some internship programs also in Canada to help expand, on the talent and ensure that from an organization perspective, I am able to help not just nurture the next generation, but also ensure that Sirius has access to some of the best talent. In the short term, and this is the primary reason I have not been blogging a lot recently, most of my learnings have been focused around the data science, machine and deep learning. That is an area I really want to learn a lot more about because it is the hottest thing right now. Whether or not it's exaggerated in terms of the AI component of it, that can be debated, but where I'm spending most of my time these days is learning more about data science, machine learning, deep learning. And I'm also preparing for the next round of challenges, whatever that brings. And as you can see from me expanding my knowledge into data science, machine learning, and so on, I'm ultimately evolving my skill set. And this is something you need to do. You need to evolve your skill set. If not, you will become a dinosaur. You will become extinct. And in the age of cybersecurity, in the age of automation, in the age of machine learning, your job is more than likely going to be automated sooner or later if you don't make yourself, quote unquote, what they call the knowledge worker, someone who has to use more of their brains rather than just repetitive tasks being done. If it's repetitive, believe it or not, someone is going to automate it sooner or later. So I myself have to prepare. And look, even as we talk about the data science and machine learning, there are things such as auto ML where they're trying to automate some of these processes. So everything, as much as possible, people will try to automate. And once again, big for me, paying it forward. I mentioned the co-ops and these things, but I also run informal boot camps where maybe a group of people reach out to me and say, hey, we would like to work on these technologies, or we would like to work at your organization. And I spend the time with these people, put them through the same 6 to 8 weeks program, or in some cases, the one I'm going to run in June is going to be for 3 months. And they immerse in technologies such as Palo Alto, QRadar, and so on. And note, I tend to focus a lot more on the technologies that we support as an organization, because my ultimate aim is to have those people come work with us, because I would like to continue working with the smartest and the brightest people in the group. So my lessons to share, and I'm going to wrap it up here so we have a few minutes to take some questions. Always bet on yourself, right? I was fortunate enough to have enough people support me along the way. Before I started working, an uncle of mine mentioned that in every organization you go to, and I'm not going to use the exact word he used, but I'll try to use a milder term. But he basically told me that every organization you go to work for or work in, there's going to be at least one jerk. Not the word he used, but I will use the word jerk. And he said, you cannot let that jerk down your spirit or anything like that. So those jerks, I tend to ignore them and focus on the people that are there more to help me than to regress my progress or something like that, okay? I said also, don't allow yourself to become a dinosaur. Take risks, right? I did not need to leave Guyana. Once again, I did say earlier that I did have a comfortable life there, right? I had lots of fun, a biker boy, if you want to call it that, right? Riding a Yamaha R6, very, very comfortable life I had. Take risks. Don't be afraid. Share your knowledge. I blog. I wrote 2 books. And to be honest, the first book, they only came about as a result of someone suggesting I put it in a book. I was actually writing some blog posts. And the 2 young ladies that I had in mind, young lady named Anuja and another one named Kenna, one of those young ladies still work with us. As I told them about the concepts and I started writing the blog articles, they said, no, Nick, you better off putting everything together in a book. And that is how I ended up writing a book, not by choice, but by they just suggesting that. And I think I wrote 2 relatively good books there, especially the first one, since that was the one that really took it off. Absorb as much knowledge as possible, right? And I say be proud of who you are. This session is all about SANS promoting its BIPOC, or people of Black, Indigenous, people of color. I think that's what it means, right? But this is all about SANS promoting its diversity. So whoever you are, whatever you are, be proud of it. In my case, I'm proud of who I am. Who am I? I am Nik Alleyne, but I'm also proud of what I am. What am I? In the context of this presentation, I am, let's say if we, in the context of shortened form, I am YBP. So I am young, I am Black, and I'm proud. And that's it for my talk at this point in time, right? Be yourself, be proud of who you are. What am I? Or who am I? I'm Nik Alleyne. What am I? In the context of this diversity program, I'm young, Black, and proud. So thank you for hanging out with me with this session here. Hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about me. And once you understand, I would like you to understand that to become an expert, you don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm an expert. It takes years of experience, years of repetition, and hopefully you've seen that my career has given me that opportunity to gain that experience, to do that repetition, right? And as I look to the future, I'm excited about what is coming next.
Wonderful, Nik, thank you so much. If you would move your slide to the next one so people can see your contact information, and we'll answer the final questions we have here. First one, have you faced inclusion issues due to your culture and accent?
I like that question. I don't think so, but I will tell you this. As I spend more time in Canada, I ultimately had to adapt my speech pattern. Adrienne would probably tell you during that first class that there probably was some communication issues, and communication issue not being a bad thing. Where I'm from, people typically speak a lot faster, and if all of us are from the same place and we speak the same way, we will understand each other, which means I had to learn to slow my pace down. So from an inclusionary perspective, or anyone discriminating against my accent, I would say no. But I have had situations. I do a lot of teaching for SANS in the outside of North America, for example, right? Europe, I've been Africa in terms of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all of those places. They're typically, the majority of the class understands me clearly, but there might just be a person or two that might require me to maybe speak a little slower or maybe rephrase. But in general, I would say no. Okay. Am I taking mentees? Yes.
Great. And the final question we have time for, did you find a need for programming knowledge?
Oh, that's a great one. And I will definitely wrap up with that one. When I did my computer science degree, I despised programming. I loved networking. And today I still do. But I can tell you this, as I evolved in security, I had to take advantage of that programming knowledge that I had from pursuing my degree in computer science, because ultimately today, you want to automate the boring stuff. And if you're in security, you more than likely will be scripting, you will be automating, you will be programming something. So even though I might not have liked programming initially, it is something that I've gained an appreciation for. And you can see this from some of the content I've posted on GitHub. I have scripts that, for example, automate threat intelligence into packets, automate threat intelligence into QRadar. I have a script on building a tool for DNS spoofing. So I might not have liked programming initially, but I've learned to appreciate it more. And the knowledge that I got from my computer science degree has helped me tremendously. And more importantly, as I focus on the data science and the machine learning, I can avoid programming if I want by using tools such as Weka, but it's more than likely I'm going to write my own code using tools such as TensorFlow, scikit-learn, or some other framework, PyTorch or whatever it is. I've not used PyTorch that much as yet, but scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and those things, definitely you want to program. So if you're in this stage and you're saying, I don't want to program, and you intend to be in cybersecurity, my recommendation is you make the effort to start building on that programming skills.
Nik, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your story, being vulnerable with us. For everyone attending today, if we did not get to your question, do feel free to reach out to Nik. His LinkedIn is there, his blog is there, and we look forward to supporting you along the way. Nik, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you hanging out with me. Stay safe, everyone.